Yep.
Freaky Friday.
Switch teams? I mean, come on, what's...
Yep. All right, cool. So we are live. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. Wanted to do a little bit of session on kind of a year in review of 2012. You know, both what was going on in your guys' lives, good, bad, in 2012, and also, you know, highlights from 2012. Tools, conferences, blog posts, you know, things that you, you know, want to share. It's kind of thought it'd be an interesting topic today as we're kind of ending the month of January, starting the new year. So,
I'll start off. We went all year without a major mail outage or without losing someone's email, so it's one small step for man, one giant leap for our team.
And now we're going to have one next month.
Yeah.
Just by show of hands, who over the last year has changed jobs?
me.
Because I think that, yeah, I think that's been a huge. It only happened at the end of the year, but it's been a huge impact from 2012.
Cool.
Does everyone change as much as you do?
No. I think the coolest thing that happened to me in 2012 was now I am working on Logstash full time, which
And
is
you know,
pretty
you
sweet.
had a kid.
And I had a baby.
We'll say that
Busted.
Oh, for your stuff. Gosh, can't get anything right. This thing? I don't even know.
Okay, cool. Well, I had actually taken a couple of notes. Personal stuff, yeah. I had joined Mozilla almost exactly a year ago. That'll be June 30th.
Really? Was that you, Brandon?
I didn't do the clapping.
It was too
But,
well timed.
So yeah, that's driven, I think, a lot of the other stuff I've been able to do. I've done some speaking, got to help organize DevOps Days Mountain View and do the closing talk there, which was pretty awesome. For me personally, some big things that I highlighted. Maybe my favorite thing that's come out of 2012, and I think is going to be huge in 2013, is Ops School, the open source ops curriculum project that Aveline Vieg over at Etsy has started, and Etsy is you know, starting to push. Mozilla, we're also looking at how we can get involved with that, but I think that's going to be really cool. If you're not familiar with it, it's opsschool.org, opsschool.org, and the idea is it's an open source curriculum that could be used to teach people how to do ops, kind of solving that problem of you know, how do we create the next generation of people that we want to hire. Right now, a lot of it is outlines, you know, kind of people have, you know, they sat down and kind of it started with just a big outline of, you know, oh, databases 101, monitoring 101, what might that contain? And people have started fleshing out parts of it. It's all open source. It's all just restructured text documents, and the site is a Sphinx site. But you know, the idea would be that we can create and then potentially get, you know, accredited or certified a 2- and 4-year curriculum so that someone could go get a degree in systems administration or something.
I haven't seen that in a couple of months. How far has that come? Like, what's your biggest need right now?
There's need all over the place. People are starting to submit pull requests. I haven't spent as much time as I would like looking over what's missing, but I'm hoping to in the next month. I have some ideas for getting some for some ways to really help that content start to grow. But you know, it's like the next month out is where I'm hoping to put some time in there. Has anyone used it? Either, you know, or has anyone like actually like read and a section that they found very useful? Yet? No.
I haven't yet. That's actually on my list of goals for 2013 is to get heavily involved in that. Just from the academic side of it, it looks really interesting.
Cool. The other big thing that I thought was cool, there's another thing I want to play with, but it's a tool called, I'm not sure if it's Riemann or Ryman. I think it's Riemann. But it is a tool that Kyle Kingsbury has been working on, and he gave a lightning talk on it at DevOps Days Mountain View, and it's kind of interesting. It is. I'm pulling up the site here. They have a better description than I. If I could spell. Come on. What's going on? My goodness. Okay. There we go. So the idea is that it is a tool for aggregating events. Basically, you send events into it, and it processes them using a stream processing language. So events come in, and you declare what you want to happen to those events as they come in, which could be, passing off to alerting, passing off to Graphite. There's all these different sort of things that you can do with it, and I don't know. It's kind of interesting in a lot of ways, in terms of connecting to it and sending stuff out of it. And just I've seen some people talk about starting to play with it. It seems like an interesting tool, kind of part of the monitoring toolbox.
How is that spelled?
It's RIEMANN.io. I guess in general, like I think one of the great things about 2012 was the kind of this shift from just like being like, oh, monitoring sucks, so we all use Nagios, but nobody likes it, to monitoring love is kind of the new term that came out of DevOps Days, Rome, and at least that's where I first saw it come up. And this focus on, we can build better tools, we can, take the tools we have and potentially improve them. But I really like that shift from just a negative focus to more of a positive one, and I think some interesting stuff has been coming out of 2012. Freeman, Sensu, there's other things out there. More and more people are starting to use Graphite. Right, it's been around for a while, but its usage is really, really ticked up, and so there's just a lot of cool stuff going on, I think.
I think that's kind of was a big thing for me. 2012 was just really an eye-opener of that chance to see the world that I've never had a chance to see with the roles that I've played in the past. Going to things like DevOps Days and Surge and just understanding the types of problems that people are solving and how they're solving them has been real interesting. And just getting involved in things like this and other parts of the community that you don't hear about if you're not actively seeking it out.
So what else? That can't be all that happened in 2012.
Can't remember 2012 anymore.
Oops, sorry. I was trying to unmute myself, and I muted Jordan instead. Let me throw one out there. What was the best conference of 2012? Best tech conference, I should say.
I personally, I really, really enjoyed PuppetConf, so I'm going to put my vote in for PuppetConf.
The MySQL conference, the first one, was actually really, really successful and had some amazing information that you just didn't get in previous versions in our history. So as a DBA, that was phenomenal.
I'm going to call DBA bias on that one.
Well, sure, but I mean, you have to consider the fact that in the database world where information is so obscure that it's always just read the docs, read the docs, read the docs. Even as a DBA, we spend a lot of our time reading the documentation because that's all we can ever get for a source for information. It was so amazing to have an entire conference where it was, here is everything new in 5.6 that's coming out next year, all the cool stuff, all the new features, and we're just going to tell you all about it so that you don't have to sit there and waste time and read the docs.
Very cool.
I think watching the videos, because I didn't actually go, but PuppetConf is definitely on the top of my list of the neatest videos came from it. I'm hoping to go to PuppetConf this year. I was definitely bummed that it overlapped with Surge.
The interesting thing about PuppetConf, I'm curious what's going to happen this year. it seemed like it was a. So I didn't go the year before, but the conference was like right at that critical mass size that I think next year is going to be significantly larger. And I'm sure the speakers and stuff will be great, but I think what you can get out of the conference might not be as exceptional as what happened this year, just because of it wasn't a small group by any means, but it wasn't big. We're talking only a couple thousand versus tens of thousands. And it was an outstanding conference. I'm curious what it's going to be like this year. I also do want to go as well this year.
On the note of conferences, I always suggest people come out to Scale if you're on the West Coast, because holy crap, it's what, $70, and it's probably dollar for dollar one of the best value conferences you'll find.
Brendan and I will actually be there. And Jordan speaking at it as well. So I think a bunch of us here will be there.
Yeah, in terms of what I was able to go to, DevOps Days Mountain View was a good one for me. I thought there was a lot of good content and just a really good community. I think the DevOps Days events have really gotten to be a good and inexpensive, if not free, thing. It really looks like this year's shaping up to have a ton of them all over the world too, which should be great. And in fact, there's a DevOps event the Friday of Scale. It's like a single track, single day event as part of the kind of the opening of Scale that Chris and I'll be speaking at, and there should be some good talks. I'm helping a little bit to organize that and figure out the talks and stuff, so that'll be cool. Stuff I didn't make, I watched a lot of videos out of Surge 2012, and DevOps Days Rome seemed to be like probably the conference I most wish I could have made but didn't go to in terms of content that came out of it that I enjoyed watching.
It actually, just kind of bringing up the DevOps thing, it's been one of the things that there's been this huge focus on is DevOps is not tools, it's culture. And I think since starting my new job, I've really started to wonder how much tools play into culture and how they affect things, because it has been interesting, right down to the point of the way the things you come into the organization with definitely change your bias about how you want to work and how you think about contributing to the group, that type of thing. GitHub being the biggest example.
Any other conferences?
Say that again, Corey.
Any other conferences that come to mind?
Did anyone make it to Lisa?
We had a few people go. I think we had some SREs and no one in this call right now.
I looked at what was going on, and I just, because I live an hour north of where it was held this year, and it was hard even to justify the idea of driving down for a day. I just didn't feel like the talks were there this year.
Yeah, that's surprising. I remember Lisa 2011 was where Ben Rockwood gave that keynote, right? That was the really good keynote. So there's a lot of good stuff out of there. That's the one tricky thing about Lisa too, right? It's right at the end of the year, so sometimes you forget, like, oh, was that last year or this year? Because by the time you get to watching the content, it's blurred into the new year. I didn't have a lot of other. There was one article. I was looking at going through my Instapaper backlog, which unfortunately I rebooted in like September, so I don't have anything before that. But one article from last year that I really liked was from Ted Nyman. He's at TNM on Twitter. You might follow him. He does, I think he does ops, but he's over at GitHub. And it was an article called "Celebrate Remote Work," and it was just a little bit, but it was talking about the idea that about a remote culture, and that it benefits the company as a whole. And moving from like job postings that say remote work possible for the right candidate to work where you want. And that was something that I liked. I felt like there was quite a few things about that last year, especially within the ops community, about emphasizing remote work, and a lot of companies are moving in that direction. GitHub has always been a poster child for that. Being distributed, Mozilla, right, is pretty distributed. A lot of IT works from home, including everyone in the web ops team works from home. Corey manages us and a ton of other people from Indiana. So that I've got to see firsthand how it can work really well and how it can be really good for a company. And I feel like we've seen other companies too, right? Like Etsy was a company that for a long time was like in Brooklyn. Recently started hiring remote. They've got some guys in the UK, and I think they've got some other people over. So I'm excited to see that shift in the industry and see that sort of become the become the standard, become like like the places that support a remote culture are seen as sort of like better in a way.
It's interesting that you bring that up. I literally was having this moment a couple days ago thinking about this. I remember when I was in university, which actually wasn't that long ago. It was probably my second year, so 2003 maybe. We had this course that we were taking, and there was a whole section of it about telecommuting and how it's becoming more and more popular. And what I realized is it actually hasn't happened as quickly as I remember people talking about it happening. Like the idea that the cultures have accepted that working from home is just, you can actually get work done if you're at home. I've been fortunate in my career where I've worked a lot of years now at home, probably 5 at least. And but that doesn't go across the board. I have lots of friends that work for extremely forward-thinking technology companies, and they do not have the option to work from home. Or if they do, it's only 1 day a week. So I'm surprised the culture hasn't come around faster than it has. It's been pretty slow, honestly. I don't know what the reason for that is.
I just jumped on a company, and I'm 80% remote, but it's definitely, I think a huge part of that is the personal side of things. I sit here and it's okay, I need to be at my computer, and at the same time that realization of, if I was in the office, it wouldn't be a big deal to walk down to the beach for 15 minutes just to get a breath of fresh air. And I've had difficulty adjusting to that. And then on the flip side, I think that there is just I think part of remote also has business hour implications. So really, you need to stop thinking about the 8 to 5 or 10 to 6 or whatever your company expects, and realize that your people are going to, if you give them the ability and you've hired right, you're just going to kick ass and take names. So give them the option to work the hours they work. And it's actually been interesting to watch Mozilla and to follow different people on Twitter, because that Dan Parsons comes to mind. That guy is up until ungodly times at night, and it's working remote that allows him to do those interesting things. Whereas I'm the reverse. I feel like I get up I'm at the computer at 7, and I'd probably be there earlier. But while I find things to do and I work through things, I do feel at times it's like I'm waiting for people to get into the office at 10, because we haven't developed that ping pong relationship of, I'll send you mail, and and asynchronous is probably the better way to put that. So I think that impacts things as well. Just it's such a different thought process.
I think you highlighted oh, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
No.
You highlighted a benefit and a problem that goes along with that, that comes from it. I mean, you've got, on the one hand, the benefit of time shifting or working, whenever's most productive for you, I guess. And but on the flip side, the aspect of, I can't get up and go take a 15-minute walk right now. I think that stems from the fact that being remote, you're not as visible. So being there is almost your visibility. Like how are you going to be foreseen if you're not at the keyboard when someone pings you, or at IRC when someone pings you, that kind of thing. It's a hard thing, and that it's even harder with time-shifted people whose colleagues might not see the results right away, or see that they are working. I mean, how do you go about proving yourself and proving your work so that you can get up and take that 15-minute break without looking like a slacker?
I think the key there is that you shouldn't have to prove yourself. I think the default should be that everybody's just assumed to be a rock star. You're hired in an organization for a reason, and I think what we do at Mozilla that makes it work so well is IRC. Everything there's transparency in what we do. We have group channels for pretty much everything. If I'm going to step away from my computer, like yesterday, I stepped away for about half an hour because I just needed to rest my eyes. I had a really bad headache. All I did is sent a message on IRC saying I'm AFK for 30 minutes.
Slacker.
But nobody's going to question you on that, right? Like, nobody's going to say, why are you away? Why aren't you getting your work done? I think as long as there's transparency between people and the business in general, it works really well. The second that breaks down is when you don't have that transparency, and like Corey said is right, you have people you feel like you have to be there because you want to always be able to respond to people's requests when they come in, so that they don't think you're slacking off.
And which, from a business perspective, is more detrimental because you're opening yourself up and almost preempting yourself on a regular basis, looking for that interrupt request. You're spending more time watching IRC than you are getting work done, just because you don't want to miss that. I often tell people it's like if I ping you and you don't answer right away, and you don't answer for a long time, that's fine. You don't have to think that that's going on your performance review as, not responsive or whatnot. If it's important enough, I'll text you or I'll page you. If it's something I need right now, I have other ways of getting a hold of you. The IRC ping is just a first line or a convenience thing. So I think that there are pros and cons, and we've gotten into a way of working that can almost be detrimental to our productivity as remote.
And burnout. So the reason I've come around is I burnt out real hard in my first work from home job doing exactly that. I was at my computer 24/7 because I wanted to prove to everybody that I was a rock star and all that jazz. And it lasted about a year before I put myself in the hospital. So it's really, really important to not let yourself go there. And it's not as much the ownership is on you. It's on you and the organization about having the trust. It's a trust thing.
Well, and it's interesting that it's both ways, because I think I put more pressure on myself than I probably should, and even more interesting, taking that the next step of you think about, well, what have I gotten accomplished today versus what would I have gotten accomplished if I was sitting in the office, and the answer is I still got more accomplished today by sitting here at home, and I didn't spend 5 hours. Is that right? Yeah, about 5 hours commuting.
Yeah. No, I get it. Like I'm fortunate enough to be close enough to our office, one of our offices, that I do go in once a week, and I find those are my least productive days of the week. I wake up earlier, so I'm usually tired by the time I get to the office. There's a lot of drive-bys. People want to talk to you when you're there. They want to go for lunch. They want to do these things, and it's all really good. It's good to socialize and get to know your coworkers. But what suffers, I find, is my productivity, and that's part of the reason I keep it one day a week.
Yeah, and definitely I agree with all that. And one thing that I have to remind myself too is like, if you work in an office, you're there 8 to 5, right? You got an hour for lunch, couple breaks, drive-bys, all that stuff. Like, you're maybe gonna get like 5 productive hours out of a day in an office, right? That's how it goes. So like when you're at home, right, you have to remember, like, it's not expected that you're productive every minute of every hour that you're like on the clock, because that doesn't happen in the office. But you can create an expectation for yourself. It's almost like you feel like you're consulting, right? Like they're billable hours in a way. So it's like you got to maximize every minute of every hour to justify it. But on the topic of trust, you actually reminded me of something that I thought was a really good thing that came out of last year too, which was it started with a blog post from John Allspaw back in May, but on Etsy's culture of blameless postmortems, which he made a post on and actually caught enough a buzz that it was in Business Insider, did a write-up about it a little bit after it came up. And I thought it was a really interesting. I know it's floated around Mozilla a lot. We've been talking about it a lot. And I really like the thing about blameless postmortems, but something that I felt like I saw in 2012 along with that was certain organizations having transparent postmortems when they post about their stuff. And somebody that I felt like was really leading the way on that is Travis CI, the guys over there, and Matthias Myers, their ops guy at Roid Rage, has written a lot of their postmortems as they've been growing and launching their commercial service, and that's something that I've really enjoyed reading as they've been posting those, and so actually want to give him a little bit of a shout out because that was something that I thought was great, and I think that's a part of you want to do like a blameless postmortem culture. Part of it is that openness and transparency. Like we collectively knew this thing and then we put it out there and let the public see it. I think those two things feed on each other, and it's been a really cool thing to see in the last year.
Yeah.
Speaking of, go ahead, Chris.
No, all I was saying is I agree. So go.
I was going to say, speaking of disasters in 2012, I was thinking of postmortems and having to write things up like this. How about that leap second bug? Was that any of the rest of you guys hit by that?
I wasn't on call, so I just sat back and laughed.
That was a nightmare for us at the company I was working for at the time because it took down literally 100% of all of our MySQL servers across the board.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, I was fortunate enough that I had written a program to kind of cluster, do kind of like cluster administration across all of them, that we were able to recover the systems within only a few hours. But had we not had that in place, I mean, you're talking it was over 1,000 systems, so it would have been almost a full day of manual work to try and get to everyone and recover all that.
I just lucked out that we happened to be in a shop that didn't have much Java. Or the Java that was run was, professors executing a Java job, not running services. Otherwise, yeah, that was painful to watch. Ugh.
A million Minecraft servers screamed out in horror.
It was pretty bad because the product I was working for was all written in Java using a Google Web Toolkit, and yeah, it crashed nightmarishly.
I think the coolest thing about that, not being on call and watching the whole thing catch on fire, was that Twitter and other avenues were how people were collectively solving this across companies. Like I do remember, I think Mozilla was one of the first companies to announce, hey, we're not really sure what's going on right now, but we ran this date command and it fixed the problem, so we're just gonna do that and then figure out what the hell happened. And then
one of the rock stars that's responsible for that story.
What's that?
I thought that was really cool, because normally when things are on fire, you don't see a lot of cross-company coordination, but this time it was different.
Well, I think that goes back to culture and the whole, the DevOps culture being a culture rather than a set of tools. I think that can transcend companies, and that's where it's all about sharing, not just sharing information in times of need like that, but sharing tools. Like all the companies are sharing their tools now, and we get to benefit from Logstash and Graphite, all these tools here that we're scratching an itch for someone else. So, yay for culture in 2012.
And yay for not just culture inside the companies, but outside the countries, or outside of companies, and enter the ops community. How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Twitter definitely, that's almost its own tangent, right? Is how communication is changing, and in 2012 and into 2013, and Twitter was a big part of that. I happened to be home and online on IRC, as I'm sure all of you that work remote have have started to discover happens, right? You just randomly are popping into your work stuff all the time. And it was a Saturday, it was like 5. My kids were playing, my wife was at work, and so I just happened to be on the computer and looking at IRC when alerts started flying from our Nagios bots. And, it was 5 p.m. Pacific, it was midnight UTC, and watching Twitter, and, a couple things started popping up. And then one of the people I follow is Cliff Moon Polysoft, who's the CTO over at Boundary, and a lot of their stuff is JVM based. And his tweet was just something like, FUCK, like just like some kind of exclamation. And like, knowing that their stuff is JVM based and seeing their stuff, it just like clicked. And, like watching the different things and IRC and channels from Mozilla and other channels I'm in, like sort of sucking all this stuff in and just watching it, right? And it was like, it's just interesting to watch organizations and people correlate that stuff and be able to watch it and very quickly see, figure out, yep, this is what's happening, this is how to fix it, here's ways, I think within like an hour, a couple different people had like ways to use the date command to sort of get things to calm down without needing to restart all of your services, but a lot of people already started rolling restarts. And but in general, that is an interesting shift to Twitter and other like social streams as becoming part of almost like troubleshooting, right, and diagnosis, failure diagnosis, right? Like your internet gets weird, you go to Twitter and start searching, seeing if is level 3 broken or is it just me or something.
Well, I also think it's been a shift to keep companies more honest as well. So it goes a little further than that too, right? Like if things are down, obviously, hopefully that people at those places know that. But if they don't, people are complaining about it real fast, right? So it's more freedom of information, or more of a free flow of information, I guess.
In general, I think that's been a big win, is just seeing how much information has flowed from different companies, and I think that's going to be an interesting adventure at my new company, is just understanding how open source works and all that good stuff.
So a couple other things that I had highlighted in looking at, especially my Instapaper backlog is a good thing. There was a great article, I thought, by Mitchell Hashimoto, the author of Vagrant, called A Wide Range of DevOps, which I kind of liked. In particular, I think he does a nice job of defining what DevOps is meant to be, especially in its roots, right? The term has certainly evolved into meaning a lot of different things, similar to cloud and agile. These things, right? Words change, they morph, but it's sort of the core meaning of it, of cooperation and focusing on culture and stuff. He wrote a great article that was published on InfoQ, talking about it, cultural changes, technical changes, and highlighting some of the stuff that things like metrics and monitoring, automation, config management, some of the sort of practical components that often help make up cultural shifts where DevOps is succeeding as a change for the better. And so that was something that I really enjoyed reading. And his work on Vagrant also, I think, has been, for a lot of people, a pretty big thing. That's been a big thing, I guess, to see come out of 2012 as well. That's maturing. I think he officially started his company at the end of the year, so that's an interesting thing too. He's, if you haven't heard that, he left the startup he was at to focus on Vagrant full time, and as a company, and his first thing he's turning out the door is a VMware Fusion provider. So that's exciting to lots of people everywhere. But I think that's a big win for anyone who uses that, right? Him working on it full time. It's going to mature a lot faster than it was able to before. Anyone big Vagrant user right now?
I love the Vagrants. My killer is that I'm not going to go there. Just some interesting Puppet stuff, but I absolutely love Vagrant.
Another DevOpsy thing that I highlighted was Tom Lemoncelli at everythingsysadmin.com. You've probably seen one of his two books that he's worked on, Time Management for Systems Administrators, which we talked about last week, or The Practice of Network and Systems Administration. He wrote a great article called DevOps, to increase reliability, you need to have more outages. And just talking about that, about the idea that doing fire drills and having outages actually increases, right, your ability to withstand failure, because you're constantly uncovering single points of failure, automation problems. Oh, this service wasn't actually check configured on, right? Little and big things. It's validating assumptions or busting assumptions.
Well, that's I guess the concept behind the chaos monkey stuff, right? Is that you're just randomly killing crap to see what happens. I'm a big advocate on that.
Behind what?
Chaos monkey.
Oh, chaos monkey, yes.
It's that, and that's exactly it. It's unplanned ways of making things fail, and if you can cause your own outage by doing that, then you've got things that you got to fix. Right?
Our chaos monkey is named Juniper.
Well, we have many names to our chaos monkey.
I don't know. I think our chaos monkey's JLAS, RMRF / what?
It was definitely even those concepts coming about, I think, is kind of interesting, and just how much we've started to hear from Netflix about A, that they're open sourcing as many tools as they are, and B, that it's the crazy stuff. It's like you would never think that the Chaos Monkey by definition goes against everything we were taught initially as systems administrators, but you start looking at it and realizing, oh wait, this actually makes us significantly more failure tolerant because our stuff has to be able to break.
Yeah, and they're not, and keep in mind, they're not the first to do it. Maybe they're the first big organization to talk about it, but it's something that's existed for a while. I actually used the same concept at my last job, just to randomly kill what were effectively webheads across multiple data centers, just so I could kind of prove out that our true redundancy across data centers worked for our nodes. It just randomly did it. Sometimes it didn't do, sometimes it did a bunch. The concepts existed for a while, and I think it's a really great one to use.
I think the other thing that's been real interesting that's come out of 2012 is that we're starting to see a lot of these types of things that click to those of us that are sitting in the room start getting picked up by Business Insider and by the trade rags that sit on the CIO desk. And you were starting to see people in higher places. And remember, I come from academia. We were still running PL SQL for web front ends. And in fact, I think they still are. Starting to see some of these concepts bubble up and make it beyond just these IT geeks that sit in the corner and actually be seen as business value, and people are starting to understand that it's been really neat.
Mm-hmm. So we can be hipsters and say, I did it before everyone else, before it was cool.
Hey guys, I got to take out of here. Thanks a lot for the chat. This was refreshing. It's a nice break in my day. Hopefully I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks.
Cool. Thanks for contributing. Yeah, it has been interesting. Speaking of Chaos Monkey stuff, I actually discovered, it's funny you can discover even within your own company, you don't always hear about stuff until someone makes a blog post, once you're big enough. But over in web dev, our marketplace team, which if you haven't been following a lot of Mozilla news, AMO, addons.mozilla.org, is morphing into a marketplace as we start to do web apps and specifically apps for the Firefox OS phone platform that is forthcoming. And one tool that the guys on the AMO development and ops team put together that was kind of interesting, they wrote a blog post on load testing the marketplace and building tests. And as part of that, they were like, you know what, we want to see what happens when stuff fails, but we also want to see what happens, under like network delays, right? Partially dropped connections, sort of things that might happen to maybe like a phone that's talking to a marketplace. So they wrote a TCP proxy called Varian, which I guess means rapscallion in French. That is kind of, the idea is like it's their own chaos monkey for TCP connections. It currently supports TCP, HTTP, Redis, and Memcache. And what it can, you can tell it, like introduce delays, say like a 20% delay on all traffic to a specific backend. It's got quite a few little things, and it's all code driven. It looks like it's written in Python. I just discovered the other day and was starting to read about it. It was kind of an interesting thing, and talking about introducing failure states and stuff as a, that's one way, right? You just stick it in front of your traffic, and then you can dynamically mess with the traffic. I've seen other people have tools that are similar, like that you put it at the edge of your network, and as the traffic comes in, it sends it to production, but it can also like replay it to like a testing, or it can capture it or reassemble it, like some stuff like that, to where you have like a mirror, right? Like staging. You can.
There's a Ruby project by God, I can't remember his name. It's called EM-proxy. It's basically meant for doing that and traffic shaping and things like that. And I think there's another project called Trickle. It's a little bit older, but it lets you do like bandwidth throttling over sockets for any process. It's not meant as a proxy like some of these other projects are, but it works for per application.
Cool. I am taking notes, so I'm going to post a bunch of links at the end of this if you were like, wait, what's that? What was that? But yeah, EM proxy. It's Ilyan Grigorik. He founded PostRank and is now over at Google since they acquired it. He posts a lot of interesting stuff. That's cool. But yeah, and I find tools like these fascinating, and actually, a lot of this stuff, is going to be interesting, I think, to play with it, right? And that's the funny thing about, like, within Mozilla, right? Like, one team is doing something, and then you're like, oh wait, yeah, no, I want to try that on our side too. You don't always realize what's going on, but there are some interesting things there. And as you mentioned, Chris, a big shout out to Netflix for open sourcing their stuff. They have a GitHub page that is actually, it's got a fun design. It looks like the Netflix browser, and they've put out a lot of good stuff, especially if you're a Java shop. There are a lot of interesting tools there that can help you with Java and your Java on AWS. There's even that much more that you can.
Yeah, they also gave some pretty cool talks that I attended at reInvent about some of the tools that they were open sourcing and how to use them internally and stuff. So yeah, they definitely are attempting to be transparent about that stuff, and I give them a huge thumbs up for that.
Yeah, and on the negatives turning positive, we talked about the monitoring suck stuff turning monitoring love. I haven't heard anybody on the Netflix side say no ops in quite some time. So I think they've started turning at least what I know a lot of fellow operations people saw as like a negative perspective into something a little bit more positive, and they've been releasing a lot more tools and public talk. So it's been cool to see.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. In talking about topics and talks and things for the DevOps Day thing for Scale, we had a couple people submit stuff talking about like framing it as like, oh, DevOps versus no ops. Let's talk about that. And I made the comment. I was like, well, people don't really use that. That's kind of died out. Even people that were mentioning it, like, have realized that the no, right, the negative, that was kind of the killer of it, and that there are better ways to frame that, right? You can talk about like, we don't have a siloed operations group that is this separate entity and development is over here. We're embedding people, right? We don't have, strictly speaking, ops people. We just have these engineers that are part of the teams for the systems they're building, and their responsibilities include being on call and monitoring and all this stuff. Yeah, getting rid of any like negative or anti or exclusionary kind of stuff has been good, right? That was part of the monitoring love thing was taking what they felt was a lesson from NoSQL. Right? Using that term NoSQL hindered probably the adoption of a lot of these newer like non-relational or document-oriented data stores that are really good pieces of technology in some ways, and but being like NoSQL, right? It immediately divides things into two camps, and that never helps. So, yeah, that's been a nice thing to see sort of drop off, and also, and I think in a lot of ways, Netflix has become a leader in terms of culture and tools. And I think people have passed around a couple links on Twitter where they've actually had job postings that had the term DevOps in them. So it's been, both an interesting change and I think a really good one.
It's funny that you make that connotation difference for NoSQL in particular, because it's one of the things that in the industry, as a DBA, we don't just want to use one tool. We want to use the right tool for the right job. And often cases, people will come and say, hey, how do I store all these files? And I'll tell them, don't store it in a database. That's the wrong place you want to store it. And they'll look at me and be like, well, what do you mean? Well, and then you have to suggest, well, think of a NoSQL solution. And they're like, NoSQL? And you're right, it's got a negative connotation. It kind of splits up the camp. But personally, as a DBA, it's an amazing thing to have the right tool for the right job at all times. And it's not a division of camps or a division of efforts. And it's just taking the task at hand and using the right tool for the job and improving the culture, and the verbiage we use around it is a big part of fixing that.
The worst part is, and this is going to sound terrible, but is how much of a breath of fresh air hearing you say that is, because of how frequently you see the just crap that goes on. Because you're right, as a DBA, as a programmer, as an IT professional, we should be reaching for the right tool, not for the tool that happens to give us the best swag or has the new shiny interface. Just like as a carpenter, they're not always going to reach for a hammer. In fact, it gets so crazy as they've got different types of hammers for different types of things when they're dealing with nails. So I think that it's a breath of fresh air to even hear that kind of a conversation happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's and as I said, it's kind of more along the lines of being a DBA. I would love to sit here and tell you MySQL is great for so many things, and it's great for storing data. It's amazing at doing that. But when you get into, I want to store files or I want to store binary information, that you don't really want to look at a relational database system, because binary information is not related to each other. And the entire point of using an RDBMS is that your data must be relational.
Yeah, and it's been interesting too, right, to see how some of those tools have influenced the traditional relational databases, right? I forget if it's in 5.6 or the next release, but I saw MySQL is adding or starting to add a Memcache interface that works with InnoDB.
In 5.6, there is a Memcache native plugin, so it's built into the system, as well as there is a full NoSQL solution as well, so that you can basically try to do NoSQL inside of MySQL designed primarily for smaller shops that don't have the ability to move into some of the bigger data file stores like Mongo or Hadoop or otherwise. But you're right, and it is. It's interesting to see how the shift away from SQL, because of that, just the word dividing the world, NoSQL versus SQL, kind of put an influence on SQL to feel stressed that hey guys, we have to keep up with that.
Yeah, well, and Postgres, right, has interesting changes. 9.2 came with a JSON data type and PLV8, and I don't know if it ever hit stable, but I saw somebody had at least an alpha proof of concept of a bunch of PLV8 stored procedures using the JSON type that was a full implementation of MongoDB's API using in Postgres. So it's like as things like that come up, and I've had a couple conversations with people in web dev at Mozilla here about they're like, we really want to be able to store JSON natively. We're pushing it to the client. We want to store it, but on the other hand, we understand operationally that we can't we can't just say, hey, we need like a third data store, right? We're already using a MySQL and a Memcache. Like, you may not want to support another data store. Well, what can we do? It's like, well, we already support Postgres, right? It's a supported production platform with automation. Postgres 9.2 cluster lets you store JSON. That's like a potential really good option for something that we already run, and maybe they'll just switch to Postgres completely, right? They've got their SQL, they've got their document store, and one engine,
Yeah.
or one service, I should say, and that's really cool. And in fact, it's great for, I think, both development and operations.
Exactly, and that's where it comes down to the simple basis of, take your task, pick the right tool for the job. Don't just pick the tool that you're familiar with. Don't just pick the tool that you think is, okay, yeah, this will, solve my issue if I build all these extra things. No, if there's a tool out there that can do everything you need, pick it. Go with it.
On the topic, just going back a little bit to what Jordan had mentioned, that has also been kind of a neat thing, is I think we have seen a huge shifting in roles in a lot of organizations where, the traditional dev versus ops lines are no longer as consistent as you would have thought they were, and I think that more importantly, you're starting to see with larger organizations the way that where they're drawing those lines and how they are allowing the teams to work together is really interesting, and it's been eye-opening to change jobs and to kind of see how things are laid out.
Cool. One thing I wanted to mention, we kind of veered away from that topic earlier, but on the topic of postmortems, there's a really cool pinboard feed based on the tag postmortem that at Peak Scale, Tim Freeman has started maintaining, and he's got, I think, 105 now links to postmortems, both security and service outage. So it's a really interesting collection of different styles of postmortems, and just as you're thinking, how can I write my postmortem, or I have to do a postmortem for the first time, or something in your shop. It's interesting, and it's got good stuff from like App Engine was down, or an S3 problem, or HipChat, or DNS Made Easy was DDoS. Looking at a few here. GitHub ones, Netflix, right? Tech blog about the ELB outage on Christmas Eve. Tiny little startups. So there's a really nice cross section of shops, big and small, both service outage and security there. I'll have a link to that in the notes, but he just posted the other day, and it was talked about this morning, so it was fresh in my memory as something that's it's more current in terms of postmortem, but it's a good thing there. Yeah. All right. Any last words? We're going to do about an hour. It's going to be lunchtime here on the West Coast. Any last little things people wanted to highlight from 2012?
I think that the idea of Hangops and this whole movement unto itself has been huge, and yeah. So a big thank you to Jordan and Brandon for even starting this and making it a reality. And making it happen each week, because that's the hardest part.
Yes, I second that.
Well, thank you guys. This has actually become a lot bigger than I anticipated. This started from, I think it was last July-ish. Jordan and I did a couple quick hangouts one week because I don't know, I was banging my head against something or other and wanted somebody to talk to, and I know Jordan's usually available, and so we tried a hangout because I'd never used one. I don't think he'd ever used one, and then we were like, we should do this weekly. Grab coffee or whatever, and then have a virtual coffee. And
the real reason we needed to stay was because of the little hat things you can put on you. That's why.
That is right, with the hats. And so I was like, why don't we make it a public thing? And then, I don't know, the name Hangops just came from somewhere, and we put it out there. I figured maybe it'd be a couple people. But I think it's really turned into a big thing. I was watching the little YouTube widget here, and we had 14 viewers at the peak. We've had in past weeks this full of 10 people, and then 8-10 people watching. Got a lot of followers on Twitter. getting good feedback. I think it got a shout out or two during DevOps Days NYC a week or so ago. So thank you guys. Being part of an awesome community is what makes this able to happen. People being willing to come on here and talk about stuff and really just be open and come and talk about topics and things. As it's you guys that make it happen. I'm happy to drive it, but without you guys watching, without you guys participating, it would just be me talking about cat gifts. Which could be a thing, but it wouldn't be as good as this.
And you could do that all day long.
But, yeah, I agree. This has become a cool thing, and I have a couple good things lined up for February, and have been brainstorming, maybe some interesting ways to use this and build other things around it in 2013. So I think with that, we will call it a day, and have a good weekend, everybody, and I'll see you next week.
Have a good day, guys.
All right. Later, guys.